Rapaziada, junho já tá aí, o que significa que estamos cada vez mais perto do lançamento do Final Fantasy XVI. E há um tempinho atrás, o Code Fox, que tá encarregado aí de toda a localização do jogo e da história, deu uma entrevista pra Game Informer com algumas novidades sobre como essa história vai ser contada um pouco mais nesse aspecto. Então, resolvi fazer um react aqui dessa entrevista junto com vocês, a gente comentando um pouco sobre o que ele fala. Bora nessa então? Galera, se curtiu o vídeo, não esquece de deixar aquele crítico aí no like e se inscreve no canal, a gente faz vídeo aqui todo dia, tamo rumo aos 100 mil inscritos. A gente só vai chegar lá se você se inscrever aí abaixo, mano. Então vem fazer parte do clã rumo a essa jornada aos 100 mil. Quanto que vocês, então bora nessa! Fala galera, aqui é o Kaká e mano, já vamos direto aqui pra Game Informer ver essa entrevista que a gente tá alguns dias atrasado, né? Mas cara, essas semanas aqui foi loucura de lançamento e bastante conteúdo pra gente trazer aqui no canal. Então vamos lá ver o que ele comentou. É legenda automática, tá, clã? Então vamos lá.
The one thing that I can assure there'll be a lot of are very bad puns in the quest names and achievement names. That is something that I knew from the beginning I wanted to carry over into Final Fantasy XVI.
I confess I expected more from the old man.
Hand over the dominant, and I'll leave you in peace.
You would dare to make demands of me.
You have this world with the Mother Crystals. And Mother Crystals are pretty much everything that this realm revolves around. They are the sources of the ether, and the ether is the source of magic. In a lot of past Final Fantasies, magic is used for battles. In Final Fantasy XVI, in the realm of Valisthea, you will have people using crystals to fill up their water jugs. You'll have crystals that get the fires hot enough to create steel, but they don't have the technology to get those fires even hotter to be able to make steel. But we have steel in the world. How do they do that? Well, they have magic. So why do we need to find a way to make fire hot when we can just use a fire crystal?
Entendi. É interessante, tipo assim, parece que a sociedade ela se acostumou a usar o poder dos cristais para algumas tarefas cotidianas, pelo visto, né?
Because you have these people relying on the magic, they don't learn how to do a lot of stuff, and they rely, in some places, too much on these crystals, which, again, becomes the center pieces in the narrative, where what happens then when the magic starts to run out? The first thing they think
é a mesma situação de como quando acaba a internet, velho. Você fica assim, o que eu vou fazer agora?
Well, we need to go and invade this country and get their crystal because that one's still working.
Vamos no vizinho roubar a internet
and that creates a lot of that tension there. But ultimately, the Mother Crystals are dying and the power is running out. And there's going to be a time when the world is going to be faced with this decision. What do we do without the Mother Crystals? How are we going to be able to survive without them? Creating this kind of story that shows when humanity is put in that type of situation to have to survive without something that they've relied upon for so long, and seeing how certain people react to that.
Se a história começar a desenvolver para um ponto de realmente, igual a gente está imaginando, acabe os cristais, a sociedade vai ter que viver de uma forma muito diferente. E só abre possibilidades para contar muito mais histórias no mundo de Valisthea, né, no futuro.
The Fallen are, as their name suggests, they fell. They had a civilization that was highly advanced to a point where they were able to leave the land and create their cities in the air. They had their airships. They had their floating cities. Like Icarus flying too close to the sun, they went a little bit too far, and for a reason, again, that I cannot mention here, they ended up falling. They lost the magic, it all fell to the ground, and it's still, you have those ruins remaining 1,500 years later. For the people living in that world, they see this as, okay, these are people that tried to get a little bit, they were too advanced, and in their hubris, to try to get too close to God, they fell, and there's a lesson to be learned from that. There is that little bit of wariness there, that we're not going to follow the same footsteps, but again, there's always going to be the people that are like, yeah, but it's all about power. And you'll get to see kind of who the Fallen were, what their ultimate influence was on the current civilization, as well as many other things, again, that I can't talk too much about.
Cara, os Fallen, né, os caídos, eles são uma coisa que a gente não viu sendo muito tratada nos trailers, né, pelo que a gente tem visto. Então, mais pelo jeito que o Code Fox está falando aqui, é uma parte importante aqui da história.
The Dominant. The man who killed my brother.
Are you absolutely certain?
I've seen him every night for the past 13 years.
Cada vez com mais pontos na história.
Watched as the flames of his icon took Joshua.
We do want to give the players a lot of the lore, basically just through playing the game, not in just like lore dumps. We didn't want to have, instances where players were just going into a cutscene and then you'd have one player just kind of talk at you for 5 minutes, telling you everything you need to know, with Clive saying, oh yes, oh yes. Oh, yes.
Quando a gente chega num lugar novo, o NPC te apresenta o lugar.
We didn't want to do that. We wanted to try to tell the story through the cutscenes, through what's going on, imply a lot of things through the dialogue. Final Fantasy XVI is very streamlined, I think, compared to 14 in that. The dialogue is a little bit more focused, implying a lot more things, rather than just telling them directly to you. There's going to be lots of different places to find your lore, whether it be in side quests, where you can go and learn about the people living in the different areas, the people that are going to be living in that hub, the hideaway that you visit, are going to give you a better idea of what's going on around the world, but also just in these regular people's lives. You're going to get very profound quests that talk about, they get into politics, but you're also going to get these quests that talk about, one woman's life, a day in her life, and what she does, and the struggles that, she has to deal with in her everyday life. And in that sense, get a picture of, okay, the world is not just, politics and intrigue, but there's also these small problems as well.
Padrão também, né? A gente tem que ter essas sidequests menores e tal, mas igual ele falou ali, essas sidequests, elas parecem que elas dizem um pouco de como aquela sociedade vive, né? Então isso é um aspecto que pode ser interessante de ser trabalhado.
Scale has always been, again, I think that focal point in the narrative, in the story, and in the game in general.
O QTE aí.
Showing, that difference in size from, just one human in a whole continent all the way up to, this giant, mythical creature, fantastical creature that has the power over an entire continent, but when you look at it, is really, again, just a man or a woman that just happens to, again, turn that big. That man and that woman, that person that embodies the icon, the dominant, how they take that power and how they use it on that grand scale.
Cara, vendo essa luta de novo dá vontade de jogar, velho.
There are going to be things that you can go around and read. So you'll, go into a building and there might be a bookshelf. And every now and then you'll be able to target one of those books and be able to read a page from that book. There are signs in the pubs that you enter that you can find out what's going on in the pubs. There are notes that you pick up. Clive has a reading desk in his chambers in the hideaway, and letters will be delivered to him every now and then, and these will kind of talk a little bit more about what's going on in the world. A lot of times when Clive completes a quest, several days after the quest is over, the person that Clive helped will send a letter to kind of follow up on what happened after the quest was over.
Ah, legal. Então tem uma continuação da quest. Você vê o resultado dela depois.
Item help
através da
and weapon help, all of those have little text blurbs. But that was fun, being able to go in there and try to not just say, okay, it's a bronze sword, it's a sword made of bronze, but talk about this sword is used by soldiers in this army, and they use, these cheap materials because, these reasons, and they have to import this from this place.
Isso é bacana, parece que eles pensaram bastante até no quesito das armas mesmo, né? Essa arma é assim, por quê?
Help text is just something that people just kind of skip over because it's just stating the obvious. I didn't want the help text to state the obvious. I wanted them to be a part of the lore as well. Sometimes we have like quotes from famous people that lived long ago. We have like poems. It's not direct inspiration, but I looked at like Magic the Gathering cards, how they would have a lot of different type of that flavor text at the bottom, and it wouldn't just be an explanation of what's going on in the card. They'd usually have some kind of historical reference, or they'd have a quote. I thought I wanted to do something like that with Final Fantasy XVI as well.
Isso aí é difícil, hein? Fazer com todos os itens do jogo, criar tipo propósito, uma história para ele.
There is a lore master in the game as well. His name is Harpocrates, and he will be in this hideaway that Clive can go to. Basically what Harpocrates has is what we call the 1,000 tomes, and it's the 1,000 tomes are his compilation of all this knowledge. And Clive can access this at any time in the game. It's like a lore dictionary or a lore encyclopedia. It has hundreds of different entries, from everything to enemies in the world, flora, fauna, geography, history, cities, people. The two best things about this is, one of them is that you can come in and access it at any time, and not just by going to the hideaway, but also you can press pause during any cutscene. And by pressing pause during a cutscene, you have the option to open up the lore dictionary. We call it our active time lore.
Active time lore.
So basically, in real time during a cutscene, if you hear a name or something that you don't recognize or you can't remember, you heard it but you can't remember who that person is, you can press the pause button during the cutscene and then press another button that will bring up this lore dictionary. You can, again, learn about those names that maybe you had forgotten about or that you hadn't heard about. So they are always understanding what's going on in the world, because a lot of times in the cutscenes you're going to get a lot of different names and they're all going to be kind of sounding weird and you're like, I don't know if I heard that before.
O pior que 16 tá bom, falta só os nomes dos 14.
You'll be able to use the active time lore to refresh your memory. The other thing that is great about this Harpocrates Lore Dictionary and Thousand Tomes is that
pera aí, rapidão. Só que pra falar que isso aqui é uma coisa muito bom, tem muitas pessoas que são como eu, que eu sei que é tipo assim, existe, cara, minha memória é uma merda, é muito curta. Então, tipo assim, falou do fulano tal na primeira hora de jogo. Cara, depois eu vou esquecer quem é esse cara. Ou então eu lembro muito do rosto da personagem. O rosto dela é assim, mas quem que é essa personagem mesmo? Como é que é o nome dela? Eu não sei. E aí, às vezes, fala o nome da personagem, mas eu não sei quem é, né? Acontece muito isso, pra quem tem problema de cabeça igual eu, é assim, né? Problema de memória. Então isso é legal. Assim, pausar no meio da cutscene eu não sei se eu faria, mas é legal ter a opção de, tipo assim, quem é essa pessoa mesmo? Eu vou, pauso rapidinho e vejo quem é nesse Active Time Lore. Uma parada que eu acho que eu nunca vi nenhum jogo fazer isso, né? Essa atenção aos detalhes, pra você não ficar perdido na história.
Itself throughout the game. So the entry that you have on, say, Rosaria is going to be different early in the game than it is later in the game. As things happen in Rosaria, that entry will be updated. And then you can see all the past entries and how things have updated as well.
Fica tipo histórico, então, do lugar.
I know that Yoshi-san in the past has mentioned things like Godzilla, he mentioned like Ultraman, Kamen Rider, all of those tokusatsu type of things. For the game in general, I would think that, yeah, a lot of those visually, you're going to get a lot of that in the cutscenes as well. Things are very kind of in your face. The reactions that the characters make during those battles, the motions that they do are all very action TV show, action anime style. Everybody's in that kind of like idle pose and they're all really into it. Myself personally, one thing that I was reading was a book that came out recently called Mordu. It's this crazy literary fantasy that takes place in this walled-off city that I think is kind of based loosely on Paris, and it takes place thousands of years in the future, and it's fantasy and fantastical and philosophical, and it's got this weird kind of magic. What really inspired me is at the end there's this huge long glossary. It's almost like 100 pages of it, and he goes into descriptions of all of the terms in the world, and the way that he describes them was very, very funny as well as informative. And as I'm looking at this, like, this is exactly kind of how I want to do the help text and the lore translations in the game as well. And so I kind of got a lot of inspiration from that. But if you're into something that's really outside the box type of fantasy, I consume a lot of fantasy, whether it be television or novels or movies. A lot of things that I draw upon are just the things that I absorb during my everyday consumption of fantasy.
Se você quiser realmente fazer um bom serviço, um negócio assim, você tem que consumir outro tipo de material, né? Isso é normal, pra você ver o que você pode melhorar, o que você pode fazer no dele. Ah, pô, legal. Então, tipo, ele quis fazer as informações que a gente tem de conteúdo bem informativo.
I think a lot of Final Fantasy XVI's development happened because of the things we learned on Final Fantasy XIV. So we know that we're going to be doing things that maybe go against the expectations of the 14 team. There is that kind of worry that some of the stuff we're going to be doing is like, well, that's not the game I wanted. I really like 14. Why are you going away from that? On the other hand, Final Fantasy XIV's community is one of the greatest, gaming communities in the world, I think. They're so supportive of each other, and they're so supportive of the development team. And I think that is because Yoshida-san, since his joining the team, has fostered this communication, this relationship with the fans, where he's going to be open with them. He's going to tell them everything that's going on. And that's not just Yoshida-san, that kind of permeates the whole team. So when the team speaks with the community, and when the team develops this game, they're creating something with the fans in mind, because they're listening to the fans and they know what the fans want. So because we have that sense of trust and we have that relationship built up, we know that that community is going to support us in what we do. Because we're honest with them, they can be honest with us, and we can move forward in that direction. So it's pressure, but on the other hand, it's something that's actually been really supportive for us, because we know that they're not going to judge us until they play the game. They're going to allow us this opportunity to try something new, and they're going to support us, and they're going to give us feedback.
Tipo assim, tudo bem, da gente pegar algumas coisas que a gente vê da equipe de forma geral, do que trabalhou no 14 e tal, algumas coisas que eles aprenderam e botar no outro, mas é um outro tipo de jogo, né? Afinal, 16 não é MMO, então uma coisa vai ter que ser um jogo bem diferente nesse ponto, né? Por causa desse ponto.
Again, the effort put into this is really going to pay off, and I think that the trailers that players have seen and what they're going to end up seeing in the end game, that end product that we have, I think it's really, really great because we put so much work into it.
Não, pô, deu pra ver. Só dele ter falado ali que pensou em cada um dos itens. Tipo, os itens terem informações, assim, de lore, tipo, não ser somente, igual ele deu exemplo, é uma espada de bronze. Você pega uma espada de bronze e a descrição tá, é uma espada feita de bronze. Não, ele fala da onde que vem, de como é que foi comercializado o material. Cara, parece que vai ser um jogo que, em questão de detalhes, parece que vai ser um jogo extremamente detalhista. E é um jogo que, porque ele é extremamente detalhista, porque a lore do mundo tá tão bem construída, ele não quer que você perca. O Active Time Lore acho uma coisa muito boa, exatamente pra gente não se perder. Normalmente, eu não me vejo pausando uma cutscene, que eu acho isso uma heresia, a não ser que você, sei lá, tá com vontade de cagar. Mas, assim, em qualquer outra circunstância, eu não me vejo pausando a cutscene. Mas é interessante que eu posso abrir a qualquer momento, mesmo que seja depois, eu ver e tentar ver, tipo assim, eu esqueci quem é esse personagem, o que aconteceu aqui mesmo, e ter tudo ali bem detalhadinho, ter um histórico das coisas. Pelo que a gente tinha visto também, acho que foi no State of Play, a gente viu que você pode ir avançando na timeline dos acontecimentos, né? Então você pode ver exatamente o que aconteceu em tal momento. Então parece que eles refinaram bastante esse ponto dos acontecimentos do jogo, que foi realmente o que o CodeFox veio aqui pra poder falar aqui com a gente, né? Sobre a lore do 16. Mano, eu tô bastante animado. Eu acho que vai ser uma das histórias mais picas de Final Fantasy. Não só porque ela é mais madura, ela é mais pesada, mas você vê que, fora esses aspectos, que são aspectos muito bons, você vê que a censura não tá segurando a história do jogo, você vê realmente que eles estão prestando atenção em todos os detalhes aqui, pelas entrevistas que a gente tá vendo. Então, só tô animado pra caramba. Bom, galera, é isso. Espero que vocês tenham curtido aqui o vídeo. Se sim, não esquece de deixar aquele crítico aí no like, se inscreve no canal, segue a gente nas nossas redes sociais e comenta aí o que você achou dos detalhes que o CodeFox mandou aqui pra gente sobre a lore, sobre como eles estão construindo o Final Fantasy XVI. Deixa aí abaixo nos comentários. Molecada, se quiser dar uma ajuda aqui pro canal, considere assinar nosso PicPay que tá na descrição. A Aslan só tá ganhando algumas recompensas e vai estar ajudando a gente a ficar independente pra gente só produzir conteúdo aqui pra vocês. Mas, se quiser dar uma ajuda menos compromissada, tem a nossa coleção de camisas da loja.com.br/ataque-crítico pra você ficar no estilo, e também o cupom pra você usar na sua assinatura do Nerd ao Cubo, receber itens nerds todos os meses com descontinho, e também o cupom pra você usar na sua lente de VR pra proteger o seu visor e não precisar mais usar óculos de grau quando estiver jogando. Beleza? Vou ficando por aqui então, valeu, um abraço e até mais.